Hi, and welcome to NewsSoft's Medical Practice Management Podcast Series. I'm Lindsay Coates. Today, we've got Dr. Randall Wong joining us. Hi, and welcome.
Good morning.
All right, Dr. Wong, medical practice websites often fall to the wayside because there's oftentimes so many other things going on, but a recent survey indicated that 80% of consumers are searching for health information online. So why is there this disconnect about the importance of having a good website within practices, and should they start paying more attention to them?
I think over the last 5 to 10 years, medical practices were slow to adapt or accept anything web-related, and that included having a web page. Initially, there was a concern, or there was a desire to have a web page which served as a resource for existing patients. But as we're finding out in the last couple of years, as we're trying to catch up with the rest of the world, and what I mean by we is physicians, that the website actually needs to have two roles. One is to serve as a resource for existing patients, as I said, and an example of that would be directions to the office, insurance is accepted, etc. The new role of the website is a marketing tool. And this is where you hear terms such as SEO and social media. This is where those terms come into play. I think most practices are slowly realizing that for them to have any sustainable marketing, that they need to have a website. If you look around us, all the traditional avenues of marketing are basically completely gone. Print is basically gone because everyone turns to the internet to find their information. Nobody buys a paper anymore. Radio is obsolete because the new generation picks their own music. They don't like to hear ads. Same thing with TV. We either DVR or record something. So it's either the internet or nothing. And I think for whatever reasons, doctors are finally understanding that we or they have to turn to the internet to grow their practice in any way.
So what types of things can you add onto your website then? You mentioned SEO, social media. How can they start working with these?
If we understand that a website has two functions, and the traditional function, I think doctors did a very good job on. And again, that was a resource for existing patients. If we focus the rest of our talk today on how can a website reach out and attract new patients, there's only one way a medical practice can do that, and that is to employ the techniques of something called content marketing, which mainly says that if you produce good content on your website, you will be rewarded with high rankings on search pages. To put it a different way, the goal of every medical practice should be that when a person is Googling something or searching something on the internet, the medical practice's goal should be to come up really in the first 10 results of the search page. If you get that exposure, you're going to be able to get interest in your practice, and you're going to be able to gain really new patients, hopefully.
I mean, if you're on one of the second or third page, you're not really being found.
Well, I don't think any of us really ever bother to go to this, past the first page whenever we Google something. We take a quick scan. If we don't see anything we like, we either use new search terms or we go on to a different activity.
Exactly. So what kinds of content should they be creating? What can they offer?
80% of Americans are searching on the internet for health-related information. More specifically, what they're really doing is they're trying to find answers to the health problems that they have. What I'm saying is that we, as physicians, via our blogs or our websites, need to provide the answers to those questions. I've been doing this for about 3 years. I get specific questions all the time. Most people asking questions or making comments are very respectful to the fact that I can't make a diagnosis. Providing health information is very different from providing a diagnosis. And all the naysayer physicians that say you can't partake in the internet because of the liability aren't being careful enough to make the distinction between education versus offering advice or making a diagnosis. If you just if you just provide health information in terms of education, there are no liability issues.
So should it just be published content from the doctor, or would it be recycled content from somewhere else?
Well, the first thing you don't want to do is recycle content from anywhere else. There's a term called duplicate content, which in the old-fashioned days was really known as plagiarism. If I can step back a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Google is the largest search engine in the world. That's followed by Yahoo and Bing. What search engines do are they crawl the internet. They go through everybody's web page, and they read every text file and PDF file and count the words in that file. When you, as a user, are Googling something or searching for something, they each have their own algorithm, but what they've done is they've indexed every page on your site and every word on your site. What they want to do is bring relevant sites to your attention so that you are able to find the web pages that can answer your questions. As a corollary, what they also do is they look out for duplicate content. And if they find that your site has the same duplicate content as another, not only will you not be ranked, but you will be depressed. You'll actually be pushed down further in the rankings because of the duplicate content. So that you can't have any duplicate content. I personally feel what doctors should be publishing are the kind of canned speeches or lectures that they give to patients every day. Just put that into words and publish it on their website or blog. That would give them tremendous value to their site. These are concepts that are a little bit far-reaching for most physicians, but I think it's an easy place to start. I'm a retina physician, and I started this about 3 years ago. I'm actually using blogging software and a blogging format to create an educational site. Okay. And that is really my plea for every physician that's interested in engaging the internet. The traditional websites or websites that are created on HTML generators, those are fancy terms for programs such as Front Page or Dreamweaver. Those are all obsolete. Anybody out there that is considering starting a web page should be doing it on a blog.
So where should a practice start? Where do you find the time? I mean, how are they supposed to fit this in?
It's a good question. And the answer is you have to make the time. The learning curve is pretty steep, but my plea is that the actual dollars spent is very cheap. One of the reasons that websites have failed to begin with is that anytime you wanted to make a change, you being the practice, it would cost hundreds of dollars an hour. If you add a new physician, you'd have to have a new picture taken, you'd have to have new text to introduce the doctor, and then you'd have to submit it to a third-party company that would in turn charge you. And that was a big turnoff because in actuality, we don't like to spend money that way. Blogs, on the other hand, have been designed so that anybody can really do this, and anyone can do this from any internet connection in the world. No longer do you have to contact a specific person to make changes. And the costs involved that I'm talking about are somewhere around $8 to $10 per month. And this is once you're up and running. So cost should no longer be an issue.
It's not bad.
The only issue is writing the content. And again, once you are up and running, I would guesstimate that a small article from 300 to 500 words published once or twice a month would probably be sufficient to add value to your website. It would allow your rankings to continue to climb because one of the variables that's important to good web rankings is how often your web page is refreshed and how often a new article is published. And these are one of the rules of something we didn't really get into is SEO, search engine optimization. One of the big rules is that you need to keep your web page refreshed. What Google wants to give the user is not only answers to the questions, but gives you answers to the questions on websites which are really refreshed and really well maintained. those websites will be rewarded by the highest rankings.
Are there other benefits other than SEO? I mean, there's got to be a financial aspect to this too, I'm sure, right?
If 80% of America is looking for health-related questions, a corollary to that is that most of America is going to the internet first to find physicians. The way I view traditional medical marketing is the build it and they will come attitude. You hang a shingle and say, here I am. With the advent of the internet and with social media, the consumer, the patient, can now be a little bit more critical or a little bit more distinguishing in how they choose a physician. Right now, patients are looking for doctors that are willing to show two types of transparency. Transparency about themselves. For instance, I love to say that I've got, as you know, I've got 5 kids, I've got 2 dogs, I play tennis, and I kickbox. It's that type of personal transparency that gives you details about who I am as a person to which a patient can relate. A patient cannot relate to my white jacket. A patient cannot relate to where I went to medical school, much less internship or residency. But that's what we as physicians traditionally push down patients' throats, if you will, by putting all these ridiculous banners and diplomas on the walls as if a patient can actually relate to this. Patients can't. Patients are now looking for personal transparency. They are looking for personal transparency so much that the new generation or the younger generation, and I bet you yourself do this, that if a doctor's office is across the street but hasn't been willing to spend the time to create a website, chances are you will never visit that doctor's office. Because the feeling is that if that doctor doesn't care about engaging me as a patient, then I'm not going to in turn engage that doctor. Patients are also looking for businesses or practices that are willing to show market transparency. And these are commonly seen on sites like Yelp or Angie's List, where third parties, other patients, can actually write down their testimonials, and patients themselves can decide whether or not this is a place they'd like to visit. Most doctors are afraid to open themselves up to market transparency, and that's, I think, another reason they don't want to engage in that, although at some point they're going to have to. They're worried about all the negative online comments that they think they're going to generate. There's too much of a paranoia, where in reality, if they do it correctly, they're going to have so many positive comments about what type of practice and business they run that it will squelch any negative comments whatsoever. But that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, we could go deep into that as well. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add as far as adding value with the free content that doctors should know about?
In conclusion, what I want to say is that if a doctor is willing to put himself out there and offer free content, by offering free content, you are adding value to your site, which means that a patient has a reason to visit your site. The mechanism by which you're going to get your web page ranked is by providing credible free content. Google will reward you for that. In turn, you will get the rankings that you want, and with that, growth in your practice that everyone desperately desires. But there's a bigger picture also. If more doctors do what I dictate, the quality of health information on the internet will go through the roof. And that's the bigger picture value. That's the value added to doing everything by creating blogs and putting HealthCon out there, is that number one, you're going to personalize the delivery of healthcare information, and the only people that really benefit from that is our patients or the public.
Well, thank you so much, because I think that's a great big picture to look at, and the more helpful information you can provide, the better as a consumer coming from my end. So thank you, Randy. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone else. Please join us next month.